Hi there, Tim Irwin here from City Cigar, Hot Rods and More again. We're gonna keep on with the tubing bending and fitting information that I've been sharing a little bit with and talk a little bit about tools. Okay, we'll come back over here to my computer assisted drawing and or cardboard pattern and talk a little bit more about that. Tools you need and tools you want, okay? Things you need. Most important things are safety equipment. Shield, super important when you're grinding, goggles, you know, safety glasses, whatever you wear something. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience. I've been to the eye doctors enough time to get metal slivers out to tell you that this stuff's important. Gloves. Just to keep your hands clean. Just helps save your skin. I found myself wearing gloves a lot more and or latex gloves too. Just, you know, a little late in life, but I'm trying. Levels are important. And know the difference between plumb and level. Plumb's up and down, level side to side. So don't say level and level, okay? Just not trying to be mean, but I'm just pointing the facts out. Know what you're talking about. Tape measures, markers, silver pencils, whatever it takes to make an accurate mark. Typically, I use Sharpies a lot, but they're not very accurate. You start mashing the tip on them and the mark's 3/16 of an inch wide. I typically try to use like a silver streak pencil or something like that. Soapstone works okay, but you know, whatever you do, as long as you can get an accurate measurement, accurate mark, helps a ton. I have a Metabo cutoff wheel. I mean, you can use a grinder with a 4.5 inch wheel. That works well. I've had the Metabo for a while. Grinders with flap disc and rocks, sanding equipment, whatever. That's stuff you need when you're trying to build a chassis. You know, clean mill scale off. You can cope tubing with a Metabo if you want to. I've done that before. A lot of times when I'm trying to cope something, I may not be able to get the angle I need, so I use the Metabo, draw it out, and sand it with my flap disc and make her fit. Other tools. You got to have a way to cut tubing. I have a bandsaw. I've had this thing for 35 years. Bought it used. It's one of those that come off the back of a tool truck. You know, and the guys used to roll around selling all this junk. Tubing bender. Is it necessary? Not really. I've seen guys build pretty nice cars by buying kits. Kits are nice. Pre-bent stuff works good, and I recommend it to anybody who's starting out. If you're going to just put a roll bar in your car, buy a pre-bent kit, because most of these companies, you know, chassis engineering, S&W, stuff like that, they know how to do it. I have a box and pan brake. Not necessary. I know guys that bend stuff with just a piece of angle iron and a hammer. You can do it if you want to. The things I have, I mean, you can see I've got it, you know, my Miller sinker wave TIG welder that I'm going to try to upgrade some shortly. A Bridgeport I saved from going in a dumpster, paid $100 for it. You run across this stuff, you know, in years of experience. This is my tubing notcher. I built this myself. Built the vise and everything else. I saw one at a trade show and they wanted like $3 grand for it, and I thought, hey, I can do that. Is it necessary? No. Those little ones that run a hand drill, I had one of those forever. Still own one. Bench grinder, important for cleaning stuff up. As you can see over there on the beam there, I've got a bunch of clamps. The bandsaw, this was a gift from a friend. Top was bad, so I made a top for it. Been a lifesaver. Is it necessary? No, it's not. But it's nice. Welders, like I say, I've got a Miller 200 Millermatic that I've had for, man, that thing's 35, 40 years old. Had it a long time. Like I say, along with the sinker wave, go blue, that's me. Another recent purchase in the shop, and I recommend for anybody starting out, this little ESOB right here. That's a 215C IC. This thing MIGs and TIGs and stick welds. It does it all. It's 220 or 110. It only welds DC, it does not weld AC, so you can't weld aluminum with it. But if you're just starting out, you don't need to weld aluminum, you just need to weld steel. So okay, let's get back to the car a little bit. I'll show you where we're at. Since we last talked, we were bending tubing. We've got the main hoop fit in the car, we've got the upper hoop in the car, and when it comes to tools, you can see these little dealios here I've built. I think they were made out of lampshades that help me hold the upper hoop in place when I'm tacking it. I have to do this by myself. I needed something to help, so anything, but this is like usually a two-man operation. Plumb bobs, a lot of them. Use plumb bobs to make sure everything's in the center, and then this other little dealio I got right here, sort of like a pogo stick thing, that helps hold the front of the hoop up when you're trying to get this stuff all tacked together. In the back, we've got the main hoop supports put in, and the way I do that is I'll figure out where they tack to the main hoop. First, I'll tack them up there, and then I'll get ready to tack with the firm rail and have somebody hold the angle finder on the main hoop for me to figure out where I want to go with it. I lean this main hoop back a little bit just to give us a little bit of floor room. As I mentioned in the previous video, I try to stick with 48 inches of floor space, and I'm hoping that light ain't messing you up too bad. And we were like at 46 in this car, being it's got a clutch pedal in, and I just thought another inch of room on the floor would be better. And you can do that by leaning the main hoop back and or putting a curved back brace in. A little bit about the back brace. I determine the height of the back brace by the location of the hole in the back of the seat for the seat belts. To me, the most important part in the car is seat belt mounting location. So I locate that just below the hole so we can wrap the shoulder harnesses around that bar. One other thing I want you to see too, and this is important, I'm going to talk about this a little more. See how tight I am in the car right there? I'm doing this because the body's removable, and I want to try to keep the main hoop as tight as I can to the car. I mean, look up in there how tight I got it. It's the same way on both sides. And the upper hoop, I'm going to try to tip this up that way, is pretty darn tight against the roof of the car, the side of the car here. Front, I give enough room so I can get it up behind the windshield mount so the driver's not looking at that bar. And the thing that you have to remember when we talk about bending tubing is that tubing stretches. So you go out, and of course I got all my tools laying on here so you can see them, and you make your CAD drawing, cardboard assisted design of course. Get it all laid out, all your bend angles figured out like I talked about, everything looks good, the pattern fits in the car. So you go and transpose these measurements to your tubing and you bend it, and all of a sudden it don't fit. Well, the reason why is when you bend the angle in the corner like that, 80, 90 degrees, tubing stretches on one side and compresses on the other when it bends. But it stretches more than compresses. So the way to solve that problem is to take about a 2-foot long piece of tubing like I've done right here. This piece here, already bent, and you put a center punch mark on it, okay? I think, can you see it? Yeah, you can see it right there. And what I do when I'm bending this, I've got the die tubing bender slid out, is you line this mark up with your start point on your die. I think you can see on my die I've got a little mark there where the tubing actually starts bending. Okay, that's the start of the tube. You know, the other part where it's darker there, that's called the offset in the die. If you're measuring and can't see in there, you can calculate that distance there and move things around to get to that. So what you do is you line that center punch mark up with that dot. When it's straight, clamp it all in there, and then you bend the tube to 90 degrees. You want to get it as close to 90 as you can. Measure it with your angle finder, which I'm going to show you in a minute as well. Bend her to 90. Well, then you know, like on mine, the offset, or the die, the bending radius, which is the mean dimension in the middle of the tube, is 5.5 inches on this particular die. So when you're figuring this out, you take the mean dimension, which is 5.5, plus half of the tubing, which is 13/16, add those two together, and that gives you a starting point. Then what you do, which is going to be hard for me to do one-handed, is you stand this up vertically on your table like this, okay? Table, workbench, whatever you do. Put the flat on there, and then you measure to the center punch, okay? Measure to your center punch mark. Actually, it's on this side. So you put it this way. Measure to that center punch mark right there. Subtract your 13/16 plus 5.5 from whatever that dimension is, and that tells you how much it stretches. So what you need to do is calculate stretch into every bend. When you're doing a side bend, like over here 10 degrees or whatever, don't need to sweat it, but those tight ones in the top or your upper hoop, you need to calculate that stuff in. So in my case, I have, with 1 5/8 083, I have a 1/2 inch of stretch in a 90-degree bend. So what I typically do, being there's two bends, I subtract 1 inch from that dimension. And or when I'm measuring inside the cars, which I typically do, is I just automatically subtract the inch when I'm looking. If I want 1 inch of clearance or a 1/2 inch of clearance on each side, 1 inch total, I just add another inch. And then that gives me my outside to outside dimension. Work from there. Always remember that, because if you go bending this stuff up and it don't fit, you'll be mad. That's just part of that stuff there. So in my shop, I have a sheet metal shear, and I've got a throatless shear there. Shrinker stretchers, you know, I own too many tools. Hand drills, all that stuff. Another note too, when you're doing this stuff, when you're doing chrome moly and you're TIG welding, always drill an air relief hole behind the tube that you're putting in. I don't have any to show you right now, but that'll stop it from, you know, popping on you when you go to finish the weld, because the air in the tube will want to expand and blow the weld out on you at the end. So drill an air relief hole behind it, 1/8 inch drill bit, you'll be good to go. So a little more to share. One other thing I want to share with you too. Look at my main hoop support. I've got a bend on the end of it. I typically like bend it to the first stop in my tubing bender, because that cuts down on the surface area of the tube against the frame rail. The less the surface area, the less heat you put in that. It's easier to weld this way. You know, if you're just welding around the tube versus a real long cope, it just puts a lot less heat in the part. So therein, I think I shared before, this thing here, I MIG welded the frame rails together for expedience sake. It's just how I do it. You know, they're mild steel. They don't need to be TIG welded. You can. I just chose not to for time's sake. You know, you're charging a customer money, and you want to make money. You can either spend an hour TIG welding a frame rail in, or you can spend 15 minutes MIG welding it in. This type of car here, the MIG welding's not going to hurt. If you're building your own car, you're starting out, and you want to do all this stuff, I highly recommend start with mild steel and MIG welded. Reason being that the fits don't have to be as precise. You know, you can cope with a cutoff tool or a Metabo or a little bandsaw, and it won't be as hard. Another tool I wanted to show you, and I forgot to bring out here, is this little dealio here. I took a porta-band and put a little table on it and a stand. This thing is handy for cutting little parts and pieces, corner off a tab or something like that. This baby gets her done. I've not used it in a little while, but it's been a handy tool for a long time. Show you a little around the shop. The S10 is close to being finished. I got to put the transmission tunnel in it, and then the rear tin work. Got the master cylinder and the pedal mounted. I highly recommend using these Woolwood pedal assemblies, whether it be a floor mount or a reverse swing mount like this is. With the S10, there's no room out here for a master cylinder. If you put one on it, the tire won't turn. So I do this, and it works really well. And it's, You know, you're not reinventing the wheel that way. You don't have to build brake pedals or mounts or nothing else. It's just the smart way to go. There's other companies out there that build them, but I prefer to use the Woolwood stuff. So heads up in the shop, we're finishing the wing up for the truck right here. I got the front end completely finished, all put together. Comes off in one piece or in sections, however you want to do it. We've got Skylar B's Camaro in here. Skylar's car, somebody did a really nice job on the chassis, but the tin work and some of the other stuff was a little subpar, so we're just going back in here, cleaning and detailing and remounting fuel cell battery boxes and new tin work and stuff. Give Skylar a new car for next year. Get him going good. The car is a really nice car with an LS in it. He's won a couple rounds with it already. So another thing too, look at this here. I've got 3M welding spark paper on this thing. It just keeps from wrecking a paint job. You know, the hot metal, when you grind something in a car or cut it, the metal will just bake right into the paint and you will destroy the paint job. So we try to put this stuff on everything to keep from wrecking it. When you're done cutting and grinding, take it off. The residue from the glue wipes off with water. You know, just be careful. And that way, like I say, the hot metal sparks won't stick in the paint and ruin the paint job. So, and it also doesn't ruin the prep work for the painter, because if he gets a car that he's got to paint and it's got all this stuff stuck in the substrate, you know, in the base and the primer or whatever, yeah, it's wrecked. It's got to be stripped. So, then on to my car, the Camaro. I don't know if I shared this with anybody or not, but she's turning out pretty nice. I've 80 gridded her, block sanded. I'm ready to go, you know, 120, 240, and 400, get her ready for paint. The chassis is all finished. I think you can see in there I've got all that done. The floors are all repaired. This thing's been a race car its whole life, and I got it from a friend of mine over near Toledo, and I've done a ton of work to it. It was a car that I could have put a motor in a race, and I'm just not that smart, so here we are. Front end was multi-piece fiberglass, old stuff. I glued it all together and then made the supports to hold the hood. Of course, the doors and the hood, and there's the rear end housing for it right there. Full of pinholes, so I got a ton of filling to do and everything else. Then back in the back there, you can barely see it, but that's a 64 Chevy 2 that, man, I had to have that car. So here we go. Anyways, give you a little heads up on what's going on with tools and tubing and wants and needs. Oh yeah, I'll show you this too quick. Bead roller. I've had this bead roller for 40 years. Made it by hand. Build it out of parts and pieces. Some shafting. I mean, works awesome. I've used this thing until just recently when my buddy Ronnie brought in his Mittler Brothers, or I'd still be using that baby. It's an awesome piece of equipment, and you know, use what you got. And that's how I look at it. Use your head, figure it out. Okay, that's what I got going on. I'm going in for knee surgery tomorrow, so probably going to be a couple weeks before I do another video, but thought I'd share. Thanks for watching. Keep on watching. Appreciate all everybody does to help support me. Thanks again. And Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.